Hi, everybody. Economic Ninja here. I hope you're doing well. I want to talk today about something that I believe is very, very serious. And I do not believe the Fed is sharing all of the information. I've got a lot of charts that I printed off I want to go over with you. I've also got a couple of stories. It is regarding household credit card debt, how it is literally rapidly before our eyes exploding, and it is yet to hit the Fed website. We are seeing this happen very fast. I'm going to compare it with charts to what happened in 2007, 2008. And then I'm going to talk real quick. I've got a quick story out of the hedge, and it's very quick about healthcare job cuts because I have been talking about the massive job cuts that have already begun at the end of last year, beginning of this year. But I believe that they are going to be exploding in the fall. And I want to remind people that are waiting for the housing market to correct and other markets to correct, it isn't until someone is forced to sell something or forced to stop their spending in a couple of different ways that we see a collapse, and that collapse can snowball out of control very, very rapidly. Two different ways people are forced to stop spending is if they simply have no money because they lost their job, and the other way is by the availability of credit. And we're going to show you some charts that I think are completely staggering, and it really paints the picture of where we are now and that we are in this crash, and that the Fed, because they look back in the past, and usually to make policy decisions the past 90 days, they haven't seen what has happened in the last 30 days or the last 60 days, and they're not taking it into account when it comes to their rate hike cycle, okay? So first I wanna explain that there are so many jobs right now that people think that they are safe in, yet they are not. I've talked about the explosion in artificial intelligence and how that is going to be taking a lot of jobs later this year. And also there are people that just think that industry can keep going. And I'll give you an example. Healthcare is one of those. They're going to never take my healthcare job because so many baby boomers are retiring, getting older, and they're needing more and more care. But I'm going to explain here how that is not the case. Check this out of Zero Hedge. Healthcare job cuts up 65% in quarter one of 2022. It says healthcare announced the third most cuts out of 30 industries and sectors measured in the first quarter of 2023, according to one new analyst. The finding comes from an April 6 report from Challenger, Gray, and Christmas, an executive coaching firm that examines job cuts by US based employers. It says here healthcare, which includes hospitals and healthcare products manufacturers, has announced 22,950 cuts in the first 3 months of 2023. That's a 65% increase from the 13,900 cuts announced in the first quarter of 2022. All US based employers tracked by Challenger, Gray, and Christmas announced a combined 270,416 cuts in the first quarter of 2023, up 396% from the 55,690 cuts announced in the same period 1 year prior. Think about that. The amount of job cuts right now up 396% from a year prior. To say that 2023 is a totally different year than 2022 is an understatement, and I can assure you that by the fall and going into the fall, you will see fireworks as this economic deterioration rapidly expands or explodes. Now, I'm going to go over a story in CNBC, and it's a couple of weeks old, but it is very important. It has to do with all these charts that I want to show you. It's entitled US Credit Card Debt Jumps 18.5% and hits a record 930 billion. Remember, when you hear the words record, or you hear the words numbers not seen since the Great Recession, or numbers not seen since the last big crash, or the inflation hitting 30-year highs, 40-year highs. These are very important stories that you want to pay attention to because it is painting the picture, and we are so close to the public, the general public in this year will finally identify, oh my gosh, we're crashing, what do we do? Or maybe it's too late, I just lost my job, and they will be forced to sell their home. They will be forced to constrict their spending because they don't have any more credit cards. To see the amount of credit card debts in this chart that are exploding is mind-boggling, all right? It says here, annual credit card percentage rates are already near 20%. all right? But it's actually higher than that now on an average and set to climb even higher. At the same time, more consumers are leaning on credit to afford increasingly expensive necessities like food and rent. This is very, very vital. When the credit card companies come out with the data that shows what the average person is spending with buying with their credit card, and it goes from luxury items to, oh, that would be nice, a vacation, or my Netflix subscription, to all of a sudden you're seeing more food and more living expenses like rent being put on credit cards. That's when you know you got some serious issues. All right. That helped propel total credit card debt to a record $930 billion at the end of 2022. Now, remember, that's the end of 2022. We have not even really gotten the data out of this quarter right now. That's an 18.5% spike from a year earlier, according to the latest quarterly report by TransUnion. So not only do you have job cuts on a 300, almost a 400% increase from a year prior, you have credit card spending up 18.5%. Very telling of what is going on. It says at nearly 20%, if you made minimum payments toward this average credit card balance, it would take you more than 17 years to pay off the debt and cost you more than $8,213 in interest, bank rate calculated. It says right here that the average balance rose to $5,800 over that same period. No, so think about that. You simply have a $5,800 balance. If you only have the money to make your minimum payments, it will take you 17 years to pay it off, and it will cost you $8,000 in interest on top of the $5,000 you owe. Think about how mind-boggling this is. And let me know in the comments if you think really how many people, that average, how many people have more than $5,800 on their credit card right now? How many people have $20,000, $30,000? I talk to people all the time that are trying their hardest to get out of debt right now, and they are carrying balances over $20,000. This is mind-boggling to me. So it says whether it's shopping for a new car or buying eggs in the grocery store, consumers continue to be impacted in big ways and small by both high inflation and high interest rate hikes. The interest rate hikes implemented by the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is not close to stopping because the data is leading them to the fact that they have not broken the back of the consumer yet. What we're really looking for is delinquencies in credit cards. So let's dive in right now to all of this information. The first chart I'm going to show you is the US credit card debt balance, okay? So this shows from back here in the year 2004 to current times. Now, this is where it's very important. I want to show you something, okay? So this is the run up to 2008. And I'm going to mark right down here where this is where we saw Lehman Brothers come out. This is literally at that peak, the peak when Lehman Brothers collapsed, okay? So you see going from 2004, this is when I sold my houses right here, when things started getting really out of control, that I sold my houses. The ninja sold his houses right here, sold, because I knew that the consumer was tapped out. The consumer could no longer afford crazy mortgages and other toys to keep the economy rolling, right? So I sold my houses here, and this is where we saw it peak. Now look at where the peak for US credit card balances is up here. Now, the Federal Reserve just simply started raising rates right about here. They started raising rates. And what's scary is to see this peak of 2008, which led to the Great Recession. People were tapped out, the spending constricted because credit constricted at the same time, right? You saw this massive fall off. Look at where we're at now. And back then, we did not have interest rates where they are now. Okay, so just the dollar amount of debt that has been created and people trying to pay their minimum payments right now is staggering, all right? Another thing I want to show you is, you remember when everything went crazy and I talk about the end of 2019 when the interbank lending rate collapsed and there was nobody trusted the banks? That was right here at the last peak, okay? And then we had this magical thing happen where the economy, this is January of 2020, the economy was forced to shut down. So we saw this massive drop right here in credit card debt. Why? Because the government stepped in for two reasons. The government stepped in and started giving people money so they had money to put down on their credit card bills and pay off their debt. And also, people rapidly constricted their spending for a few months because of fear. All right, fear, uncertainty, and doubt from January till March. Something was going on, people knew it inside, and they constricted their spending, okay? So US credit card debt is out of control. Now check this out. Now this is from the Federal Reserve, this chart. This is the delinquency rate on credit card loans, okay, at all commercial banks, okay? So now this tells you the opposite story of what I told you. I showed you a chart showing total credit card balances, debt. Now, as you could see, the delinquency rate, when it peaked here in the mid-2008, it actually peaked in the delinquency rate after 2008, all right? So delinquencies peaked in 2009, okay? So 2009 right here is when delinquencies peaked. And you can see that the Lehman crisis was actually right here, a big old L. That's when Lehman happened, okay? So the fallout from 2008 and the Lehman Brothers crisis also saw the delinquency rate go to like a all-time high, all right? That's why we're not seeing it now, because many people would say, well, wait a minute, how is this happening? Well, first off, there's been changes in how these numbers are calculated. People need to understand that. The government and the Federal Reserve and credit agencies have been changing the way everything is defined. If, to use an example, literally the definition of a recession was changed last year. Why? Because the government knew that if they could change the perception of the economy, they could keep you spending, keep the hopium going, and keep the fear out. Fear is the worst thing for central planners because it stops you from spending and it opens up your mind to what is really going on. And that's the last thing they want. They want to keep this going. So right now, even though this is an all-time low compared to the past where up here the delinquency rate was high, I want you to understand this. Even at this low delinquency rate right now, with the dollar amount of average credit card debt, coupled with what I'm about to show you, the percentage of interest rate, which is staggering, it can cause on a dollar value just as big of a collapse down here than it can up here, all right? I want people to understand that because you're thinking about the amount of dollars that need to be paid back that could seize the system and slow credit expansion, okay, which is already happening right now. So many credit card companies, home equity lines of credit are contacting their, and please put it down in the comment section. I read your comments like crazy and I can see it all the time. They are contacting you and saying your available credit limit of 10,000 has been cut to 5. Your home equity line of 100,000 has been cut to 50. All right, or how's this? Due to not using your credit line, we're now cutting it to 20,000. All right, because you obviously don't need it. So those kind of things are happening. And a lot of people, homeowners in America, actually have equity lines against their home, and they are literally have them for an emergency use only. How you don't understand that if you're in that emergency and you're a prudent person and you're in the emergency, it means 90% of your neighbors are on the exact same emergency, and it spells doom for the economy. So usually that is a poor way of using money as an emergency fund. And if you are tapping into the home equity for your emergency fund, you have bigger problems. All right, now this is again a chart out of the Fed, the Federal Reserve. And this is on commercial bank interest rates on credit card plans. This is all accounts, okay? And what you can see, I'm gonna give a little highlighter here. And let me show you 2008. In 2008, when everything was going bad and I showed you the delinquency rate where it peaked at 2019, right? It peaked over here at 2019 next to that, right after that Lehman Brothers crash. All right, this is where we were during that time. The highlighted area was the interest rate. Well, let's look at the interest rate. The interest rate sat at between 12% and 13.5%, all right? Okay. So now leading up to that, you saw the average prices right here, this sort of trend that was going up right here. Those interest rates were yet around 12% even, and they maxed at 13.5. They fell pretty dramatically right here because the Federal Reserve started lowering rates. But check this out. This is what's scary. For the last, let's say since 2018, we've seen an average rate, interest rate on credit cards sit between 15% and 14 and 3/4. That line right there. All right, 15% and 14 and 3/4. It actually dropped a little bit down to 14 and 3/4 here. Now, this is what's scary. Anywhere on this chart have you seen something like what is happening right here? This right here. Straight up. Look at that. The interest rate, how fast 1 year makes when the Federal Reserve decides to start tightening monetary policy and start raising rates. Those interest rates on credit cards went from 15 and a quarter to where they sit right now at just above 19%. To look at how fast that exploded, think about what that is about to do to everybody's credit card minimum payments literally over the last year. And it's literally 1 year in economic terms is like overnight for the average consumer, just so you know, because they're unaware of what's going on. When you are looking at the everyday to day changes in the economy, it seems like it's taking forever. But for the common average consumer that cares more about their weekends than working hard and paying off debt and making literally growing wealth for their family and their lineage, it will be overnight. This is exactly what happened in 2008, even though the economy was crashing starting in mid-2005. All right, now check this out. Household debt service payments as a percentage of disposable income. We're at all-time lows. But here's the problem. How is the Federal Reserve measuring disposable income? See, they're changing metrics all the time, and I believe that the Federal Reserve is now becoming trapped by its own data and how it manipulated the numbers. And it has become so prideful in the fact that they believe they can change monetary policy whenever they want and that they're in control. And after a while of pretending that they're God and literally manipulating markets, pushing money into a system, pulling money out, whether it be through interest rate manipulation or actually the amount of money moving in and out between M1, M2, and M3 money supply. I want people to understand that I believe that they have now confused themselves and they are running around in circles like a bunch of chickens with their head cut off. So right now you see this at all-time lows. But the thing is what percentage of disposable income are they talking about? You see, the Federal Reserve can't even get the inflation metrics right on food. They're saying, oh, food inflation is only X. Let's say, or the average inflation rate's at 6%, 6.5% right now. Yet you go to the grocery store and there is no way in the last year that you could say when eggs are up 400%, bread is up 100%, milk is up like 35, 40%. Put it in the comment section what you see. There is no way that inflation is at 6%. So at the same rate, I think that this data is completely and utterly corrupted. But let's use an example. This number was spiking up in 2007, right before 2008 started. It also did the exact same thing in the year 2000, leading up to the 2001 year, okay? So people need to understand that those two times they were spiking, and they're looking at data like this, and this is what I think can really mess up the Federal Reserve's rate hike decision-making process, and they can over-tighten, which will lead to a massive collapse, which in my opinion is your greatest opportunity to grow wealth. You will make more money in bad times than good. Look, the point is, I think that in the end of the day, the Federal Reserve is running around like a chicken with its head cut off, and you need to understand these points and look back on history and just use 2008, the Great Recession, as an example, because this is going to be bigger than the Great Recession. But you could use these inputs and look at where it was in 2008. It's a lot worse now. It's the exact same. Look at this right here. Credit card debt. Here it was in 2008. Here we are now. This is utterly insane. And when you understand this time point right here, 2019, 2020, there's a reason why you saw what happened in 2020 later and the whole world shut down. I hope you guys got something out of this. Thank you to everybody that subscribes to this channel. Please check to see if your bell icon has been turned off. I have been getting insane amount of emails. Thank you to everybody that told me that. It is these updates that get pushed out on these platforms and you're not getting the videos up to date. I hope you have a great day. Get ready for this housing collapse. It will be the greatest in history. All right, with that being said, the Economic Ninja is out.